Hi there, welcome to Rob's Models. I'm Rob, and today we're going to be doing an unboxing and a review of Tamiya's Messerschmitt Bf109 G-6, and this is reference number 61117, although it does actually just say reference number 117 on the box, but if you're going to be looking up, it's 61117, and this is in 1:28 scale. Now this is a pretty new tooling. It actually came out in 2017, so it was a brand new tooling. I got it a couple of years ago. However, it's actually going to be my next build, so I thought this is going to be a good time just to have a look to see what's in there. I have actually opened the box a few years back when I first got the kit, but as far as I'm concerned, really it is going to be an unboxing, and I don't really know what's in there because it was just a cursory glance as I got it for Christmas a couple of years back. But first of all, got a lovely bit of box art on there. I'll just read what it says on the front. So we know it's a 1:48 scale and it's number 117, but as I said, it's actually 61117. Wingspan is 207 millimeters, fuselage length of basically 19 centimeters. So it's still going to be, for 1:48 scale, it is still quite a small plane. It's a highly accurate rendering of the Bf109 G-6 based on first-hand research of actual aircraft. The DB605 engine is superbly detailed, which is good. And let's see, it's a separate 20mm cannon gondola and drop tank parts. Choose open or closed center canopy, standard or Galland Panzer armor plate, and up or down main and radiator flaps. Okay, so you can actually drop flaps, those sort of things in it. Seated pilot figure and 3 marking options included. So actually looking at it, where you can actually have things open and closed, for example the canopy, but also radiator flaps, main flaps. Looks like there's actually going to be some of those things that you would normally buy extra parts for are actually going to be included in, and I believe you can actually display the engine as well. So that's going to be one of the options, which does look very nice. Let's see, there we have another option, which is the very nice looking there. The text on there is in Japanese, colours available separately. So that's going to have the mottling effect on there. That one also has the mottling effect. Come round to here. And another one with even more mottling effect, although that one's more smaller, more tighter sort of pattern. And it gives you the colour codes as well in the Tamiya as well. So that one has actually got a few more colours going on it. And we can also see the little graphic there, or the actual picture, showing with the doors up, basically the hood open, to show off that engine. So magnet attached engine cowlings, open close parts can be interchanged, so that is going to be very good. So what you can do is you can detail it all up, have the engine detailed, and then close it up. So normally when you're making a kit, you've got to make that decision: do you want to have things open or have them shut? That cowling is magnetically held in place, so you can close it and then open it as well. I believe they've done that, if I recall, from 2 different cowling parts, so it's not the same parts that flap up, but it will be interchangeable. And looking at that is actually a quite a detailed bit of engine going on in there. So I'm assuming that with that in there, that's one of the reasons why there's not so much on the aftermarket parts for the engine, because it's in there. And I guess if necessary, maybe a little bit of additional scratch building, maybe with some, a little bit of lead wire for hoses perhaps, I don't know, but that might be good. What I will say is I am actually going to be building this kit very soon. So although I'm doing the review for YouTube, what I'll also be doing is live streaming my build of this on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Rob's Models, and over the coming days, weeks, months, however long it takes, I'll be building this and you can follow along live when I stream. Head on over there, hit the follow, you should get a notification when I go live. If it's been a while since you actually see this video, then what I'll also be doing is taking some of the highlights of that, and once it's built, doing a little post-build review as well. So this is more of an unboxing, looking at what you've got in there, but I often find it's not until you've actually made the kit you know what you've actually really got. And then I'll come back and do a post-build review as well for YouTube. So let's see what we got in the box. As I mentioned earlier, I have actually undone the little tabs on there before, just when I first got this, just to check it was all in there. But it really is kind of like an unboxing live, because I really can't remember what was in there. So let's take the lid off, and we have sprues with plastic, which is pretty much what we thought we got. So it looks like each sprue is individually bagged. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 main sprues. We have a sprue of clear parts, and then some little poly caps, and I'm assuming that would be little magnets or something as well. Let's have a look. Oh yes, there's a little magnet in there as well. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves there. Got the instructions, we'll go through those in a moment. Oh, okay, now that's something I wasn't expecting to see. We have got, as well as the decals in there, we've also got little masking for the no need for separate masking, so that will be good. And that's been opened. So let's just take that. Actually, no, let's get back to why. I think I know why that's been opened, and that wasn't me that opened that. I just realised. So I'll come back to why that's been opened. We have the little bit there. Oh, this is actually about the Messerschmitt Bf109. So that's everything in the box. So let's, for now, put the sprues back in, and we'll see what we've got. So let's look at the paperwork first. First of all, we have a separate sheet, which is the background information, which is nice. But we've got background information in English, and then also in German as well, and also French by the look of that. So we've got it in a few different languages, and actually we've got here just a little breakdown of the various actual parts of the plane as well. For example, the main flap, the aileron, just telling you what all the basic components of the plane are actually, which is quite useful. And so that would be good to read, and you've got little details on the specifications of it there. And some of those pictures, actually that is the same pictures there. Some of those pictures with the swastika blanked out, I've just noticed there. So I think that's why my decals have also been opened. That's been blanked out. So that'll be interesting to have a read of, just so you get a bit of history of what you're building. Normally that's actually part of the main instructions. So let's actually go to the instructions. So we have here a little book stapled together. Let's just go through each of these. So starting off with showing what the 3 main marking options are going to be. So first of all, you need to choose which one of those you're going to be doing, either A, B or C. And coming straight over to here, you can then see on the very first one, you're going to have to decide whether you'll be doing A, B or C, because you wouldn't be needing to make alterations and options, opening up various parts so those various options can go in. So you just need to be wary of that as you're building. And it looks like the first part we'll be doing is actually going to be building up the insides of each of the fuselage halves. So fuselage assembly, and obviously detail going on there. Then the main cockpit tub, what colours things are going to need to be, obviously coming along. Got the pilot as well, got the seat, got the pilot, whether you're going to be putting him in there, or of course displaying it open, popping him into the seat, dropping him in, almost looks like that's going to be going in upside down. And then as that all comes together, building up the engine. Got the engine cowlings going round, got the tailplane going on. Option for the, actually just say, yeah, they got the rear wheel going on. Then with the wing, having to paint the various elements inside, building up the landing gear bays, radiator flaps as well, so where they're going to be going, if you're going to be dropping those. So it's actually quite a bit of detail, and you can actually see there's different colours going to be getting called out for parts, whether you're going to be having the main flaps up or down. So attaching the flaps, that's the option there. So the leading edge flaps, which would be automatically deployed in the 109. So that's all coming together, so you can really have some variation going on in the wings, not just have them flat, but have things opened out a little bit. And then you can see how this will then actually clip in. The lower wing section actually comes into the fuselage, and it just shows about how you'll be putting it in at the rear and then clipping it up into place. So basically two sub-assemblies going on there. Building up the landing gear. So as you can see, we've got some poly caps that will be going on to the belly. That will ensure that the drop tank is also a removable element as well. And cannons that go under the wing on some of the variants. So as this all comes together, we've now got instructions for the painting mask, which is good. Hopefully that is actually going to be pre-cut. It might just be that they've been outlined and you actually need to cut it yourself. We'll check that in a minute. Then actually it's quite odd because we've got the canopy and then you actually do the instrument panel. Normally the instrument panel, never noticed that, but I just assumed it would be part of this part as you're putting it in and putting the pilot in. But it actually looks like the instrument panel attaches to the bottom of the canopy, and then you drop that in and then put the cowling around it. So yes, you can have it in either the open or the closed position. Yeah, got a few little parts as well. Just need to make sure you know what variant you're doing as well. And then options for both the open and closed cowlings as well. So it looks like not only does the top open, but the bottom cowlings also open as well. So more of a clamshell look. Then the gun bay as well. Air intakes. So we've got different options for the air intakes, and again just need to make sure you choose which one. Different options for the colours and everything that goes within the cowlings. Building up the engine, and then we've actually got more engine options that go on top, and it's actually within there you're using poly caps so that the engine cowlings can be removed. And then coming over, yes, so then options for if you're having it closed as well. And again, putting in little metal washers. So what will happen is those washers are embedded into the cowling, and there'll be magnets in the engine, so that will ensure that's changeable. And we've also got stenciling instructions, so that gives the various options just for the basic stencils, which will then bring us onto the colours. So we have here A, B, so A is actually taking up both sides, all of this side. So A has got much more detail on there, and that has actually got the 3 sort of tone camo with more mottling effects down, quite plain underneath, the straight line cam on the top, and the edges have got that mottling effect on there. And then if we flip that over, so that would kind of be in scale on that side, and then slightly scaled down versions for the B and the C variants, and they've all got the same basics of a sort of a cam on the top, which is the straight edged sort of cam, although it's still although it's straight edge, it's not a completely hard line, even though it is a straight line. And you can see the different styles of mottling effect as well. So it's going to have to be choosing which one of those, whether something like this version might be a little bit more colourful, and you might even want to consider painting some of those bits which might actually be done as decals. Talking of decals, whilst we've got them here, let's have a look. So as I said, this has actually been cut open because I think it has been Yes, so obviously you can see there's a notch being taken out of the corner, that way up, and I'm assuming that's where the swastikas were to have gone, part 39, and actually if we sort of see here on the stenciling instructions, there's it's actually just a blank square there with 39, so they would have been produced, but it's not actually in print, and it would have been up to, you know, if you had got them, they would have been there, but this one, as it's being sold in Europe, they've obviously just trimmed them off. As a whole though, they do feel, actually, there's definitely a texture to them. They do feel quite thick, which is surprising. However, that should mean that they shouldn't, you know, they should be quite solid colour, which I think they are. So the whites will still be quite solid white. And I've got to say with these is they do tend to feel, I found with Tamiya ones, especially more recent ones, they do tend to feel quite thick. But once you actually start working with them, they do bed down quite nicely, and the backing sheet does sort of tend to dissolve once you actually start putting on your microsole to start getting to set and to bed down into the panel line. So I'm not too worried about that. They do feel thick, however they are really nicely printed. You can actually make out the different words, the letters on there, even on the small ones. I'm sure if you've got a magnifying glass, you could probably start having a bit more detail on there. The only thing that I must say that does disappoint, which I found this on the Mosquito as well, is that the straps themselves are decals for the harnesses. So if you're doing it without a pilot, you either have to put decals in, which will sit very flat, especially if you're having, it will look a bit out of place, especially if you're having it with the open canopy. So you'd either want to have aftermarket ones or scratch build. I tend to just scratch build harnesses with wire, some lead wire that I flatten out, and it does look like that this is essentially just been printed on. So we've got the mask there, however there's no, unlike the Edward aftermarket ones, you've got the mask, you will actually need to get a blade to actually follow the lines, and a rule, make sure you use a fresh sharp blade and a metal rule just to make sure you do actually do those. But it's essentially just a large sheet of masking tape, but it will be a lot easier to just use one of those than it is to do it. Although actually it should be quite easy enough. They do look pretty much straight lines. There's not so many curves there as you would get with some. So if you did have to use or do it yourself, that would be quite doable. As they've got that in there, that's a little extra that I wasn't expecting, which will make life a little bit easier. So let's look at the sprues themselves. Let's start with, actually we'll start with this one, which has got the fuselage halves in. And I say that because that's going to be the first part of the kit, is to really start working on these. So let's pop this open. It's good that each bag is by itself, because, for example, you have got parts like this part here, which is just dying to be knocked off. Why that sort of is almost like a bit of an afterthought that went there. You can see it's already taken a bit of a knock. It's literally just about the same size as the box, so if the box gets any movement, that is going to get bent a little bit, and of course that will potentially bend the screw gates there as well, so it might mean a little bit more filing work to get that done. But, and I'm not expecting to find any problems with this kit at all, because this is a very detailed kit, tooled in 2017, so it's going to have all the latest computer aided design on there, and they really have gone to town with trying to do this in a way that you don't actually need to have aftermarket parts on it. There's not a huge amount of detail on there, but what there is of course recessed panel lines, and you have got a few hatches, a few rivets, so it all does look all quite simple at the moment. However, I'm sure as we start looking at it, we're going to start finding more of the finer details that are going to be coming out. No sink marks, no flash. There's a few ejector pins actually, which are in where the cockpit walls will be, and they are only small, but they are in around where the detail is actually. so it might need just a little bit of a file. That does surprise me. Not so much worried about some of these ejector pins going down here because you're not going to be able to see them. There is the ribbing on there which coincides with those panel lines. But those ones, I was a little bit surprised actually. It won't take too much just to get rid of with a little sanding stick. But overall it does feel like a good quality plastic. There are some fine sort of details here and there. But even like with the flight suit of the pilot, it doesn't look completely crisper as well. I have seen crisper, I've got to say. It doesn't look flat, but similarly it's not quite as crisp as I was expecting. However, that shouldn't make too much difference. But overall, some of these are just not quite as fine as what I was expecting at the moment, is probably the best way to put it. However, I'm not knocking it, just saying it might not be quite as fine as I was expecting. Let's go for the next part. So once you've built up your fuselage halves, if we recall from the instruction book, the next part was basically to build the bottom part of the wings, the dihedral wing shape. And looking at that, actually now, suddenly, this has got a lot more detail on the underside of the wings, plenty of hatches, plenty of riveting detail as well, and that will take a wash very nicely. Panel line wash, the panel lines are very fine. Now we're starting to see some of this extra detail start coming out. So some of the lumps and bumps on there. Yeah, so okay, pleased with that. No sink marks or anything on those, and no flash, so that is all looking good. Yeah, it just seems a bit odd that on that first sprue some of the parts didn't look dull, but they just didn't look quite crisp. But those maybe are parts where the crispiness isn't needed. Well, let's see. And it seems like every sprue I open, they're getting more crisper and crisper. The engine has got some nice detail on there, and I think you've kind of got where the spark plugs will go. So I think if you wanted to, you could actually quite easily start adding some of your own parts for the leads, the hydronic lines, those sort of things. I think it's designed that actually it will be quite detailed as it is, but if you look at some reference pictures, landing gear has got some nice detail on there. It's yeah, starting to jump out a little bit. Exhaust ports are solid. I didn't know whether they might just put some indentations on just the ends, just to at least give the illusion that they're hollow. But things like there's the little supercharger fan, that has got some detail on. Definitely some good detail actually in the engine. And I think you'd want to be making this as the engine would actually be a sub-component, and as I said, detail it up. Final sprue here, so this is going to be the top part of the wings. I mean, obviously due to the build of it, of the actual prototype, the fuselage itself would have been aluminium sort of wrapped around the subframe. So not so much detail on there, but definitely on the wings and the top of the wings actually. Again, not so much, but obviously it was a lot more detail on the bottom of it where things would be surfaced even. But just caught my eye, there is actually some quite nice detail on this side of the wings, which is the internals, but that's going to be the bottom of the wheel wells, or actually should I say the top of the wheel wells, because that's the top of the wings. And you have got some quite fine riveting detail going on there. So actually, if you do have it on the wheels down, you are going to be able to look in there, and the insides of the cowlings as well. Actually, this is the one where it's you've got two options. So if it is closed cowling, it's in two parts, but if you're having it open, then actually the it's already opened. It's already going to be in the butterfly position, so you don't have to try to balance two parts open. That's already going to be there. And you've got the little spindle sticking out, so that'll be the location tab for it, so that will then stick into the top of the engine. So that's looking fine. What I have noticed is the wheels don't have a weighted effect, which does surprise me actually. I would have thought there would have been weighted wheels, but looking at this, both the rear and the main wheels on there haven't got any weighted effects. They're just perfectly round, which, as we know, under gravity and the weight of the plane, the wheels would have a bulge at the bottom. I must admit that was one of the few things I think that actually are available aftermarket, is wheels on that. So that's something to bear in mind. I mean, it is quite a light plane. I recently did a Mosquito, Tamiya Mosquito, which is a really, really nice build. I mean, there's loads of fine detail that just pops out when you're just starting to see it. And some of this is really going to take a wash, and those are the more of the access panels and things as well. But some of the large parts, there's not so much on there. But yeah, what was I saying with the Mosquito? That also had the round wheel, so I just built a small diorama base for it to sit on, just to really hide the bottom of the wheels in amongst the grass. But I've got to say, there is not a huge amount, but the detail that there is on there will really take a nice wash, nice fine crisp detail. It really does seem as each sprue's gone on, it's got better actually. And obviously it's not to say that they're not putting detail where there wouldn't be detail, so that is going to be prototypical, just the way of construction. But just some of those internal parts did just seem a little bit not as crisp as what I was expecting. But let's check out the clear sprues now. So we have two options for the front, basically the windscreen, and as you can see, this actually will actually have the part which will actually go onto the nose, which will be painted. So that should actually mean that you could just use the extra thin to get that on there, and it will be in those parts where you're actually putting the instrument panel and then dropping it in. I have got to say though, these are some of the clear parts I have seen, not just for a long time, but ever, I think. And there's hardly any, literally no distortion as I put that over there, especially with this main section. Looking at that, I'm holding it over the square, and as I rotate it over the grid pattern, the grid lines are hardly any displacement. They are crisp and clean, and even if you have the canopy in the closed position, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a lot of detail in the cockpit, which again surprises me about why they've only put in the harnesses as decals, because that is going to stand out as just flat one-dimensional harnesses. I mean, obviously what does help is, unlike a Spitfire or a Hurricane with a more dome, a bubble, a curved canopy, these are just straight square planes of glass, so that is actually going to help. But I mean, obviously helped in production, but it does actually, yeah, I'm actually quite blown away just how clear that is. And I do mean, you know, clear, doesn't need polishing or anything. It is no scratches, just a really, really nice sprue of plastic. Genuinely, as each sprue I've gone through with this has actually improved, and yeah, that is some really fine, crisply moulded. Yeah, I cannot sing the praises about that high enough. It's quite odd to get quite exciting about just a sprue of plastic, but Tamiya, top marks on that one, definitely. Let's just hope it fits. And oh, final, I almost forgot about it, final little bag in here is going to be it should be some polycaps, some magnets and some little metal washers. So, I mean, obviously we'll refer properly back to the instruction manual. So what have we got? You can see that there's already trying to stick there. So in that bag we have two little magnets, only little mini ones. They're about 3-4 millimeters, circular ones, and about 4 millimeters in diameter and 2 or 3 millimeters in width. And then in here, this one I won't open up because otherwise they will get lost. We've got a couple of poly caps, so that'll be for attaching some of the options, the cowling, the fuel tank, as well as a couple of little metal washers which will also get buried in with things, so that some of those cowlings can change. And then of course going to be held in place with magnetic force. So that is pretty good actually. So that concludes our unboxing and a quick review of the Tamiya Messerschmitt Bf109 G-6, and that is Tamiya reference 61117. And I've got to say, I'm now really looking forward to getting this one built. Those sprues in there, the plastic in there, although that first one I was a little bit disappointed about how crisp the lacking crispness. It wasn't lacking detail, and those were the internal parts. And I think actually it's maybe designed to be a little bit more like that. And as you start coming out, the tops and the fuselage halves don't have so much detail on there, but the way it was constructed, it didn't. But when you do start having the bits where the detail are, then it really does start getting detail, and that's quite fine detail as well. So as long as you don't want to be putting on thick coats of paint, keep the paint thin on there, build up the layers slowly to keep those panel lines in there, get a weathering wash on there, get the panel line wash on there, then those details are really going to start popping out. I think this is going to be something where you're going to want to be doing it maybe slightly worn but not weathered. I think if you start weathering it, you're going to be losing some of those details that you might have spent a lot of work on there. I think it's going to be good for scratch building. I think a little bit of scratch building or a little bit of aftermarket will be needed in very small places. By that I mean the engine. It looks like it's a very detailed engine, and if you just take your time and look at it as a submodel in its own right, it will look really detailed. But I think quite simply just putting in some of the HT leads, some extra bit of piping here and there, very simple, quick, cheap and easy to do with some lead wire. I got a couple of rolls of it for fishing wire, which I got from eBay for literally a couple of quid. Little bit of time, just adding some of those bits will just lift the level of that. I'm surprised that the harnesses, especially for a cockpit that can either be displayed open or if it is closed, the quality of that plastic for that clear part will make it very obvious what's going in the cockpit as well. So I'm surprised they've just gone for the decal option for the harnesses. And I do think if you're not having the pilot in there, well, obviously the harnesses are going to be moulded onto him already, that's what it's designed to do, hence why they've just put the decal in there. But I think if you're going to be having the pilot not in there, then it might be worth looking into either scratch building harnesses. What I tend to use is the lead wire that I was just talking about just now. You can actually roll it flat and then paint that, and that actually does sit quite well. It can hold its shape, or maybe get some aftermarket ones, potentially even fabric ones. That might be an option to look at, purely because it's the detail in there is so high that some of these parts are almost going to be, it seems a bit odd not to really focus on those areas. And finally, the wheels are unweighted. It does seem a little bit odd that there's not the option to have the weighted look on them. Tamiya does seem to be a little bit behind the curve on that one. They really have seemed to design this so it's either going to be in flight with a pilot in there, but then it seems odd that you wouldn't have the pilot in there if, as what most people are going to do, especially as it's an option, you can chop and change between, have it so that the cowlings are open to display that engine off, and therefore you wouldn't have the pilot sat in there ready for flight. It does seem a little bit odd, so it's going to be on the ground, so why would you therefore not take that into account when doing the tyres? So I think maybe just looking at some options for that, or just putting on a diorama display and sinking the tyres slightly in will just hide that. So I think that will be fine. I'm looking forward to building. This is going to be my next build, and I'm going to be building it live on Twitch. So that is twitch.tv/robsmodels. The general schedule is that I do Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, as well as Saturday and Sunday afternoons and evenings. That's a bit rough, it can change. And I'm doing other builds as well, but try and follow along there. You can actually follow live, we can interact through the chat, there's a whole bunch of other modelers in there. It's a great little community starting to build. And what I would do is any sort of highlights from that, and as I go, I will then come back and then do a follow-up kind of post-build review, which I'll also be putting on YouTube as well, where then we can show off the completed model and then discuss it, because sometimes I find you can review things in the box and they look great, but they don't always fit together very well, and vice versa as well. And you can really look at it, so if you're thinking of actually making the kit, you can make informed decisions without so much just having to follow what someone else is doing. So I've been Rob, thanks for watching Rob Models. Make sure you head on over to Twitch if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe on here as well so you can see how things progress here. So that's been my review of Tamiya's Messerschmitt Bf109. Thank you very much for watching. Any questions, any comments, please do make a comment below. I always try to get back to people. Hit the subscribe, hit the follow. Make sure you follow me on all the social medias and all those sort of things that everyone always says at the end of their videos. Keep modelling. See you again soon.